And we're live. Peace, beloved. Peace, beloved. Peace, beloved. It's Seiko Varner, your empowerment educator, back with another episode of the Fly Guy Show. The Fly Guy Show is a series of melanated conversations focused on improving our collective situation. Today we have back on the platform one of our teachers, our spiritual teachers, our leaders, spiritual leaders. And I'm going to let him introduce himself. And most of you already know who he is, already love him the way we do. Definitely a friend in the Fly Guy Show. One of the things that I noticed when we were having this uprising, and I want to say power to the protesters. So power to the protesters. One thing I noticed is there was an energy that seemed a little different than some of the other energies that I've seen in our country. And you know, some people have jokingly called it the Ogun energy. And I wondered, you know, let me speak to somebody who's really involved in Ifa science or HER, African traditional religion, to find out if, you know, the Ogun spirit is what's really driving this. Is there a spirit of the ancestry of the term? I don't want to use the wrong term, so I'm not going to say it. That's populating in our uprising today. So as I said earlier, power to the protesters, and let's talk about this energy. So to talk about this energy, we're going to bring in our good friend of the show, our lead Baba. I don't know if there's a term for that, but he's our lead Baba. Baba Femi, introduce yourself really quickly, brother.
Greetings, everybody. Well, you're doing so good. I mean, so far so good with your name. The full name is Chief Oluwo Obafemi Fayemi, but you know everyone calls me Baba Femi or Chief or Oluwo. Either way, don't have to give the whole title.
Got you.
But
Baba
it's definitely
Femi's back on the show.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Good to be back.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, you know, I'm involved with some of the Ifa studies in this area. And of course, you know, I'm still involved in my church and involved in some of the other cultural studies and religious studies, still involved with, you know, the Nation of Gods and Earth, and involved with some of the brothers involved with the More Science Temple, brothers and sisters rather, involved with the More Science Temple. So I'm really kind of in a lot of different spaces. But when I saw this energy, I didn't think that the Christian doctrine could really help describe the energy that's out there. I didn't really think, and I wasn't able to find anything in the MST teachings that really described what I saw. I didn't see anything in the you know, universal lessons, you know, the solar facts, none of the lessons that talked about this energy. But I did see that with the Ifa studies. So, you know, what are we seeing in the United States today with the uprising, with the youth, with this power movement? What do you see in terms of the Ifa energies? And I might say that wrong.
No. It's a little bit of all of that, and primarily coming from an Ifa perspective, the deities, those divine forces of nature that are also equal to personalities, characteristics, attributes, functions. We also equate those with, you know, the same thing in nature, functions of nature. It's very interesting times for someone to bring in Ogun. I can see that, but most traditional Ifa practitioners, we see it as also Egun. Egun meaning ancestors. There's a lot of bones being rattled right now. I was speaking to some people earlier this morning of my experiences with, you know, 2 or 3 people over the last few weeks that are not even kindred to African spirituality, but was referred to me for conversation because of their epiphanies, dreams, visions that they're having. You're talking about lay people. You're talking about, I always call it the Home Depot Walmart crew. You know, people that get up and do 9 to 5, like, you know, what the hell is going on, man? I had a dream. I was, you know, I fought my way off a noose. I fought my way off a situation. I was running from some people. I stopped, turned, and fought them. This is also the ancestral memory. This is what's in our blood. This is what's in our DNA. And someone was asking me about the statement that Candace Owens made. And that was my first encounter with Candace Owens. Someone sent me a video and said, what do you think about what she said about George Floyd's character and how we shouldn't make him a hero? And I said to him, I said, I have two questions for Candace Owens. Number one, do you believe in a higher source? You believe in God? That's number one. Number two,
right.
Why do you think God used George Floyd, this so-called flawed person? And of course, most of us with a Christian background understand most people that God used to tell stories in the Bible, in a lot of scriptures, a lot of places, use flawed people. This thing that we try to be perfect, it's a good time to make an announcement. God don't have a real strong connection with perfect people. Because if he was perfect, there would be no reason for him, in a sense. And so looking at it from that perspective, George Floyd being used as a vehicle, a vessel, or as someone said, a conduit, whether he chose this as his contract at this time or the Most High chose him, regardless of whatever it is, this is ancestral. This is spiritual. And while I'm at it, I definitely want to give a shout out to all of my godchildren who felt the need to protest, need to march, for all the brothers and sisters that, whether you stayed at home, but you spoke your truth, you didn't run away from the opportunity to talk to someone who didn't look like you or someone who did look like you and who didn't want to talk about it. And you brought the conversation in. Whether we are agreeing or disagreeing with each other, it doesn't matter at this time. We're talking. To even, see some of the people in the sports world, entertainment world, finally say something. I'm tired, express yourself. And that's what this time is. So that ancestral DNA, the brothers and sisters that we read about in books like Without Sanctuary, 100 Years of Lynching. When you spoke about, to me, not just the Juneteenth energy, but what came after Juneteenth, during Jim Crow, what they call Reconstruction. Those spirits of those brothers and sisters are still within our blood. These are our great grandparents and grandparents, and we all got stories. And so, as we call them, they're rattling our bones right now. They're waking us up, and you can run. You can run if you want to. But as I tell people, you can't run from yourself. You definitely can't run from yourself.
Hey, Baba.
Yes.
Yeah, we definitely can't run. You're having a little bit of challenge with your connection. So I'm going to remove you, and I want you to come back into the stream in just a second. All right, so just bring yourself back in. We're listening and enjoying the Fly Guys Show. The Fly Guys Show is a series of melanated conversations focused on improving our collective situation. So today we have on our Baba, our friend, a friend of the show, and he's talking about flipping temple tables. The ancestral spirits are speaking. The ancestors are speaking. So when I looked at what's happening in Minneapolis, when I looked at what was happening in New York, and I saw it actually marches and protests in Africa. I saw marches and protests in all other parts of the world. There's something that's rising up. And so Baba Femi, when he returns, is going to share with us what that spirit, what that energy truly is. So returning back to the show is our friend of the show, our Baba, our lead Baba for the show, Baba Femi. So continue where you left off, Baba.
Well, basically what I was saying, I think one of my last comments was that, for those who are trying to run, we don't know many of them. That are a few that are saying, I don't want to talk about it. And I don't think it's a good time for us to say, let's not talk about it, or it's too painful. When the movie Amistad came out several years ago, no one wanted to talk about it. 12 Years a Slave came out. Black folks were saying, I don't want to go see it. Why? Well, it's too painful. Even movies like Django, you know, we can't take it. I think you need to get a front row seat to, if not for nothing else, purge yourself, because you're holding on to something. There's a trauma that exists within us. There's a conversation we have not really had. Some of us have, but there's a conversation that we haven't really had. You know, and the people that try to have these conversations with conspiracy theorists, are we Muslim, or you on that
Mm-hmm.
African stuff? I get it. I get it why some
Yeah.
black people can't sit in closed areas. I get it why some of us can't stay in closets. I get it when some of us go jogging or hiking through a field and start to sweat. We stop and have this moment of deja vu. Brothers and sisters, that is your ancestral memory. Don't run from it. It's who you be.
Right, right. Baba, we have a Facebook user who asked about the our Caucasian brothers and sisters in Seattle who are holding a segment of the city hostage. I haven't fact checked that, but I want to take questions at the very end of the conversation. So we're going to save whoever the Facebook user is. We're going to save this question and we're going to come back to it. But I want everybody to know that Baba has thoughts, he has opinions, and he has answers. So he's definitely going to answer your question. Please continue, Baba.
Well, you know, and I definitely feel as though what can make this particular segment great is I definitely want to please the people who are listening or want me to follow with that Christ consciousness part. And of course, I definitely want to get about, you know, more into Ephi's perspective, because Ephi's perspective is very equal to the Christ consciousness. It's very, very similar to the Christ consciousness. And, you know, I want to give some people some homework, because within that homework lies some solutions. And this is stuff we can do when we're, you know, when we're at home. So it's not just, you know, let's go ahead and say that thing, you know, power up. And then, you know, once the show is over or once the weekend is over, we start to do what we normally do, and that is power down. And, you know, while we're powered up, I think this is where we really need to take it to the next level. And that's what a Christ consciousness is about. And I think one of the places, or my favorite places to start with doing my elevation of Christ consciousness, is that I challenge the thing I held most dearly in my life, the church. You know, as people know, you know, you meet someone, you get to know them, you go to school, you got to know things. You want to become a lawyer, a doctor, you got to know your craft. You go to a mechanic, you want that brother to know what he's doing. You go to the hospital, this nurse comes in, wow, she looks good, but you know what? Not today, sweetheart. I want you to know what you could do. You know, that's what this is about, a knowing.
Right.
A Christ consciousness is an awareness, it's a knowing, and it's a truth. And there are stories out there we feel the truth in it. Someone told me the other day that when I was speaking about the first statues I think need to be torn down around the country is Christopher Columbus. I mean, this cat never stepped foot on this continent. And they said, you know, it was actually a story. One of my priests said an actual story came out in the New York Times about some Italians being killed back in the day unjustly. And because the Italian government was outraged at the U.S. government, I can't remember the presidency, but one of the agreements was to honor and put a statue of Christopher Columbus all across this nation. So that's what I don't understand. Why is the statue of Christopher Columbus in Houston, Texas? You know,
What's interesting?
Go ahead.
With that Christopher Columbus piece, you know, Governor Cuomo, you know, mentioned that he had some constituents who really valued Christopher Columbus and his statue as a symbol of the Italian American contribution to America. And I think that's pretty interesting that he really wanted to look out for that constituency when his larger constituency is saying, get that out of here. Now, here's
Absolutely.
Here's the other piece. So Christopher Columbus, and of course I wasn't his name, that's what we call him.
Right.
He wasn't Italian because that area of Genoa wasn't part of Italy at the time that he was born there. Even after his death, it still wasn't a part of Italy.
Correct.
And then secondarily, one of the things that Christopher Columbus did was hide his true identity. You know, so he was part of the Jews that were in that area, and he couldn't express his Jewishness, so he hid that. But in his writings, he always kind of reflected back to it.
Yeah.
And he said that at one point he hopes that he could fully live, I guess the way we'd say it right now is live in his truth.
Right.
So, okay, so he never reached the American shores, so he's not an American. He never lived in Italy, so he wasn't Italian. But for some reason, he's become a symbol of Italian American heritage. And then what was really interesting is Governor Cuomo said, but nobody likes the stuff that he did. He did some horrendous things. So it's like we want to use him as a symbol, but we recognize that he was trash.
But see, that's the hypocrisy. That is also the dichotomy that we live with in this country. And this is what I'm saying. A lot of us are floating around with misinformation, a lack of understanding, and we're quoting these things. Our children are studying these things. We're driving by in certain areas and there are statues of these people, and none of what they stand for has been correctly given to us. And so,
right.
you know, one of the things that we have to do now is take responsibility. We have to be accountable to tell the truth. And, you know, I'm not saying Google and Wikipedia and all these other sources are your main source of truth, but it's nothing wrong with, you know, a few of us who have went to places like Portugal, people who have went to places in Europe and say, listen, hey, I got something to tell y'all. Ain't none of this written down over there. And so where's all this coming from? And so with that being said, I'm basically what I'm saying now is to follow up with some questions that was given to me from the last show. And one of the first questions is that someone did tell me they looked it up and they realized Jesus founded no religion. And they said they were upset about it. Now, I wanted to
before you
talk
continue,
about...
Before you continue, I want to give context to those who didn't have the benefit of watching the first show. So we put out the theological question, will Jesus fix it? And it wasn't can Jesus fix it? It was will
Jesus fix it?
Will Jesus fix it? And Bob came on part 2 of that theological show, and he shared his experience with Christianity. So now that you have that context, if you're a new listener, go back and watch the videos, but take it from here, Baba.
Yeah, and also there was someone who spoke about they knew of the Council of Nicaea and everything changing with the whole Christian concept, the Council of Nicaea, but there was also something that had to be looked at, and it was the apostolistic or the Apostle Council, which is around, I think it was around between 60, 70 AD, maybe 68 AD, something like that. Some places may say up until between 80 and 90 AD. Now, the key is AD. So you're having all these councils about Jesus and the brother's dead. I mean, the brother's gone. So, you know, when you start talking about Christianity, that was an issue going on in around the first century between those called it was the Hellenistic and the other groups. That was a Arianism, which did not believe in the Trinity. So that was one of the founding things of the Council of Nicaea, to try to do away or reject this Arianism. And with that, they created the Trinity. They actually put Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit as an equal. And see, before that, that never existed. And see, what's important, what I was saying, you have to go back and look at it. And to make my point clear, Jesus will not fix it. Jesus can't save this. Okay? He couldn't save himself from the same government you're dealing with now. And so there has to be a change of the way you think. Now, I'm not saying you can continue to hope, wish, think, and pray that this brother come back, but most scholars will tell you he's not coming back. Because what it is the consciousness of the title that the brother held is what you're born with to raise up in you to expand and do this yourself. And
you know what?
And see, that's what I'm saying. You're sitting there waiting for when Jesus comes, and he's not coming back. He has no reason to come back. If he comes back, that means you never got it. You never got it.
That's one of the stories and teachings my father gave when I was growing up, and I shared this in our last session. One of the things that my father would teach, who was a minister, an ordained minister, he had a doctorate in theology, and he shared with us that there were things that he learned in theological school that he could not share with his parishioners. And one of the things that is that there's a lot of talk about Christ living in you. And he said the thing that was most impressive upon his spirit was that this spirit of a savior, the spirit of an overcomer, the spirit of a redeemer lives in you. So most of that text tells you about yourself more so than it's talking about somebody outside.
Absolutely. And that's where we're going. And that's where we're going to go, because I had to go down in history. And I wanted to bring up a lot of studying the Christian church and history of the Christian church in East Africa. When I spoke last class about no churches being in West Africa at the time of the arrival of the so-called invaders, the so-called slave traders, there were no churches. And so as you go out and you develop this and you get this information through colonization, it has come all the way around from the east into the west, but it goes through a filtering process in what is now known as the Mediterranean areas. Now, that's a very fundamental thing to understand. But one of the key things that we have to look for is that in all of this is understanding that the Christ consciousness is something you're born with. It is how one elevate past low vibration. It is how one gets past certain animal instincts. It's where you come through as within your humanity. And so there's a constant battle of internal and external forces. When you start looking at a lot of the powers that be, they represent a lot of external forces. These are the leaders and elected people or selected people of institutions. So this is how you get things like institutionalized racism or systemic racism and things like that. That's a very low vibration. That is a very, very animalistic thing for you to have to want to control me through my food, through my water, through my mind, to how to miseducate me simply because you live a life of fear. Here I am trying to raise up my humanity, and I have to deal with your kind of humanity or your humankind, and I'm not allowed to be a humane. I'm not allowed to be the divine spirit that I came here to be. If someone thinks that their whole purpose or sole purpose is to come here and live a life to be accepted after their death, they're crazy. You were not born to live correctly so you can go to this land of milk and honey. Most of you Negroes are lactose intolerant. That can't be that way.
Okay.
So the heaven is a state of mind. Heaven is a state of mind. And that consciousness is what gets you there. And so the thing that you have to do in this awareness, the thing that you have to do in this knowing is you have to get to the truth. And that's very, very hard for a lot of us in our conditioned state to accept. And that thing that happened with George Floyd, I call it that thing because it's God's way. You know, people ask, was God working in George Floyd? Absolutely. Where's God working in us now? Absolutely. You may not like it because you've always painted this picture of this loving God, this wonderful God. He's going to do this. Now, the brother told you at one point he's jealous. You know, now if you're trying to bring in the human side of it, then it would have to use us humans to get to know itself better. And if we have to go through these particular type of scenarios and experiences, it has to be to elevate ourselves. There's nothing happening that we should look upon ourselves to continue to go and sink deeper into an abyss. Situations, what's happening to these brothers and sisters out here, are to elevate you. You said it yourself. God works in mysterious ways.
Interesting. I was speaking with the pastor of our church last Sunday, and we were discussing the George Floyd incident. And I shared with him that one of the things that my father used to share with me, that the world works on sacrifice. The world operates on sacrifice. So if you want to be healthy, you got to give something up. If you want to be strong, you got to give something up. If you want to be educated, you got to give something up. The world works on sacrifice.
Absolutely, brother.
Yeshua is maybe a great example of, quote unquote, the greatest sacrifice. And I said, for us to wake up and really take this bull by the horns and take this moment, there had to be a sacrifice. And it's interesting. It's interesting that George Floyd carried a Bible and wanted to be like Christ, who gave his life, according to the text, so that we could be freer. So what's happening now is George Floyd's death is allowing us to get closer and closer to being free from some of these shackles that we're still dealing with. And that was the conversation that Pastor and I had. And I thought it was intriguing when I brought it back to the metaphysical and said, there has to be a sacrifice.
And you know what?
We haven't sacrificed some other things that we could have sacrificed, and we wouldn't have had this. That it wouldn't have had to happen this way.
You know, you bring that up, and I'll go right into it, because one of the things that when we discuss some of the topics we would talk about or discuss was that what role does African spirituality play? What role does Ifa play in all of this? And you know what's interesting is that indigenous systems believed in the power of sacrifice. Colonization convinced most of us that sacrificing, meaning sacrificing chickens and goats. And that's not what this is. There's a particular Odu called Irosu Iwori. And for the viewers who don't know what an Odu is, it's an oracle. It's a scripture. It's a story. And it speaks of, in its stories, that human beings cannot live without sacrifice, that they'll keep coming back and forth until they attain the good position. And the good position is when you can rightfully say you are human beings, that you are divine spirits. That's the good position. And until you attain that good position, you'll be coming back and forth, life after life, life cycle after life cycle, karma after karma. Because when I look at sacrifice and we look into the annals of our history as African people here in America, and what people sacrificed that we are standing here today, people who took whips, people who took beatings, people who took castrations and rapes and miseducation for us to be here today, and for us to walk around and not want to know. That is the only thing that gets under my skin. You're choosing not to know. And that is the true meaning of the word ignorance. It doesn't matter if you got letters behind your name, but if you're choosing to ignore, you're ignorant. And so my thing is that when people say, well, I don't want to do that African stuff, how do you know? Well, you've never been a person, or you're not being a person who's not being open to the fact that, brother and sister, you had a choice. See, this is one of the revealing things now, is that you should now know you have a choice in a lot of things, because we've been so reactionary to everything. Stop now, breathe, and let's go back to the cause. Let's go back to the source and recognize you have a choice in things. Why is it that the leading people against African spirituality are Africans? How did that happen? How in the hell that an African spiritual system 400 years ago, supposedly, it began to be colonized? Prior to that is thousands, centuries, millennials old, and in a few hundred years, you can wipe a memory clean to think a person doesn't even have a choice. And the people that make that choice are now ostracized by their families. That should really make us think. So for every pastor, pope, sheikh, cardinal, imam, mullah out there, any bishop out there, you should at least tell your congregants, before you continue to be a Christian, I want you to be sure, and I want you to be sincere that you know you have a choice. That's what we need to start on Sunday mornings, because there are brothers and sisters sitting there knowing this stuff don't work for them. And I'm not saying every person, every administrator that's behind that pulpit, but that's the first place you start. is tell these people they have a choice. Because think about it. The one thing that our ancestors knew on the plantation, they were going to believe in something. Why did that man take away what you believed in and replaced it with something? And now on YouTube and these other social medias, there are Africans in Benin performing rituals on these cops here in America. There are people here in America that are practitioners of African spirituality that are now using rituals and ways to combat this negativity in these evil spirit people. But if you're going to sit there and continue saying we shall overcome in amazing grace, and now it's time to be prayed up, we've been prayed up for 400 years. And we think this Jewish cat is going to descend out of the sky to make this George Floyd thing right. Anybody from the ages of 18 to 35, they're not trying to hear you anymore. So my message to those to spiritual leaders, the ancestors have grabbed these young people because they have wrote most of us over 45 and 50 off. Because we fell into a way of thinking that we can't come out of. And these young people are letting us know in so many ways, you haven't done your job. Pop, mom, you haven't done your job. And so it's important for us to know, I'm not saying African spirituality is the answer, but it's definitely an answer for a whole lot of people, because the one you've been looking for, well, we see what's happening.
You're enjoying the Fly Guy Show, which is a series of melanated conversations focused on improving our collective situation. So as you can see, leave a comment in the chat. Some of your comments will be displayed. Leave a comment, leave a question. Some of those questions will be answered later on in the show. Tonight, we're talking about flipping temple tables. The ancestors are speaking. We're looking at the uprising that's happening in America, and we all have recognized that there's a different energy this time. There's a different energy this time. And Baba Femi is kind of going in and sharing what this energy is. Continue, Baba.
This is the time of our ancestors. This ain't a time of a Messiah. This is not a time of a messenger of any sort. This is the time of your ancestors trying to wake up your spirit, descendant of their blood, their bones, their flesh, and their memory. And they are tired of you crying out to them, because they've been crying out to you since they went into the ground. And you walked around them, you walked over them, you disregarded them. You will not pick up anything that they had. You scared of a drum. You scared to talk about African stuff. You're scared of a ritual, but yet if you go into a store and you buy a kosher Hebrew hot dog, you think you're getting the best. You're eating Ezekiel bread. You got halal meat, but you do not want to embrace someone trying to give you a spiritual bath to clean your negative energy or negative spirit. Someone thinks all you got to do is burn sage. I don't have anything against sage. But let me say this here. You need more than sage right now. Your ancestors are telling you you need more than sage right now. So you're going to keep dreaming. You're going to keep having epiphanies and deja vu. And if you keep ignoring them, they're going to do you just like they did when they were here. They will spank you. And you don't like that spanking. And they don't care nothing about you having letters behind your name, you being conservative, Republican, following Trump. You follow whoever you want to follow. You vote for whoever you want to vote for. But if voting counted the way you think it does, you probably would not be in this position, because it's not just about the vote, it's about a consciousness. Because even when you vote for someone, you're still not holding them accountable. They got 4 more years or 2 more years to screw things up and pass it like a baton to the next Negro who's going to step into the same system to do it again. So there's a part of us, we have to take it to the streets. And we got to take it to the streets just like Jesus took it to the streets.
Yeah.
Jesus he didn't have no suburbs.
Flip the tables.
flipping tables. He had all kind of people following him that were destitute. The George Floyds followed him. The hoes, the pimps, the prostitutes, the beggars, the thieves, the robbers, and just anybody who was looking to try to make ends meet. That's who followed him. What rich people followed him in droves? Now, this is their story. Now, when you go into African spirituality, everything is based around a consciousness, and that consciousness expresses itself through culture. So there are sacred times and seasons to honor those who came before you. If you really want to read a good book about ancestral influence, there are many. One I recommend for people to start with is one called Of Water and the Spirit by Patrice Malidoma Sobey. It's a good journey.
Great book.
It's a great book.
Good book.
It's a good book to start with.
I think I read that about 15 years, no, 20 years ago. I had just come out of college when that book, and my father gave it to me.
There's another book, Children of Blood and Bone. I hope I got the title right. I'm looking at my wife. She's saying, yeah, I got the title right. Even if you just read excerpts. Right. Yeah. Even if there's another one called Children of Another Son. Download or read the narratives, slave narratives that was recorded out in the 30s. You need to listen to this stuff.
Well, quick question then. Since you're naming books, Tapping the Power Within, Iyanla Vanzant's book. Any thoughts on that? I know that's slightly off the topic, but the reason I bring that
it's
up
a great book.
She has a blessing.
It's a great book.
She has a blessing the head ritual in there.
Absolutely. Okay. Remember, Iyanla is the prefix is Iya. Inla is a derivative of an Orisha called Obatala or Rishinla. So her name, Iyanla, she's a priestess in the Ifa tradition. She is on the back with an accolade in the book, The Sacred Ifa Oracle, written by my Oluwo, the man who initiated me and brought me to Ifa. So there are many, many practitioners of African spirituality. Some we don't really advertise. We don't really proselytize. We just go about our business. People see us, they call us, as one of our elders said, they call us the bead people because we wear all these colorful beads representing these divine forces of nature.
Right.
But I want to say something about African spirituality, and because you mentioned something to me in the title, how can Ifa improve the lives of us as descendants? Now, I'm a strong believer in ancestral reverence. I believe that when we left the shores of whether it was Elmina or Sierra Leone or Nigeria or Ghana or Liberia, wherever we left those shores, okay? Wherever we left those shores, I believe we left brothers and sisters. I believe we left blood relatives. And if you fast forward 400 years, if those relatives are still over there and they have produced generations of children. So technically we have brothers and sisters over there of the same blood, same bloodline. But there's a reason why you were not incarnated and born over there as opposed to being born over here. You have been elected, selected by your ancestors. There's something in you, black man and woman here in America. There's something special and different about you. Because even when you go to Africa, they know you. They know you're not really from there. Why? You have a certain swag. You have a certain savoir-faire. You got a certain walk. There's a certain air about you. Now, that doesn't mean, oh, well, you know, we had white folks in our lineage. Every black person in America don't have European blood in them to the degree that it's going to change your features so drastically. Your nose is still thick. Your lips are still broad. And you still have this way of walking, this way of dancing, this way of being. So just because you got 10% Denmark in you is not a call for celebration, nor is it a call that you have been denigrated as an African. Okay? So with that being said, there's a reason why your ancestors chose for you to be born here in these states of America. Because there's something about this country, this so-called experiment. And see, I have a problem with the experiment because you want to say you're born, this is the land of opportunity, and this is supposed to be the land of truth. This country is not built on the truth. It wasn't founded on the truth. And even if you think that it was, it deviated from the truth. We just started this conversation talking about who discovered this country. So you're not even founded on the truth. Now you want me to believe you in what you're saying. And see, this is important for us to understand what our ancestors mean. As descendants of those, we have to be able to tap into that energy. So our rituals and sacred times and sacred seasons are very important to us. We got to go somewhere sometimes. I don't care if you are Church in Christ. There's something wrong with you if you don't do a drum. If you are Church of Christ, well, we don't do musical instruments. There's something wrong with you. You are children of the sun. You vibrate, you radiate in the area of the pelvic. You are a melanated person. Your chakras operate in movement and vibration. That's why they call them organs. They have to move. You don't dance anymore because somebody gave you something out of a book and told you you're not supposed to do that. There's no one on the sub-Saharan African continent that don't dance. You know, that's the thing that we have to look at. Those are the things that we have to be open enough to tell each other. Now, I'm not going to tell you to quit going to the Church of Christ. But most folks I know went to the Church of Christ was still in the club on Saturday night. Doing what you do best. Jerking, twerking, skating, moving, hopping, jumping. That's spiritual. I don't care what no one says. When you go to the club, you see a lot of black folks out there start sweating. That's spiritual. They waited all week for it. They paid their money for it. They want to have a good time. It's Friday night. I want to get my drink on. See, we can bastardize that as something sinful. Oh, that's so sinful. But there's something, it's almost a rite of passage that you do to learn what it is that's good for you and not good for you. But you never stop dancing. The dance of life, the joy of life is part of who and what you are. So as descendants of African people, we got to follow our drums sometimes. As African people, we have to take time out to honor those who came before us. How can you get a check with reparation and you have never picked a cotton off a plant and got pricked?
Well, we'll tap into that a little later on. I'm glad you
see the thing of it is, if you want to repairing, you got to understand where you're broken. And if you think money is going to repair you because you're broken, as African-American people, we're out our damn mind to think that money is going to cure us. Now, you can put money into certain programs. You can put money into certain institutions that can have conversations that can give you at least a choice or give you a better reference to what it is and who and what you are. Those are the things that you need to repair yourself, because most of us can identify with some form of a background of some sexual, mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical abuse at the hands of people that don't even look like us, as opposed to the people who don't look like us or dealing with us. You understand what I'm saying?
I get that.
So tapping into the ancestral spirit is also part of our healing process personally, as a person and as a people. We're rushing out to the street to defend something, but some of us are carrying the attitude of what our fathers and mothers did. So some of us are going out there with a different agenda as to why to fight back, because this authority can represent something you never had to fight back. I want you to understand what I'm saying, because it's important, because this is why oftentimes it's so easy for people outside of us to hijack our causes. We're so busy trying to get our message in, we're not even looking totally at who it is standing next to us and what their real motive is, their sincerity of it is. There are people out there that are moving right now in a very sincere motion about what we are going through as a people. I applaud them. I embrace them. But there are those people out there who have never had anything other than a hidden agenda. They have no sincerity for your cause. This is their opportunity. And we have to be very mindful of that. But I believe, and I know I have other folks who will testify, understanding and tapping into an ancestral energy, those who came before us, is our first line of defense. It helps us to not be absence of our intelligence.
Okay. We had a couple of questions that populated, and we're going to get to those maybe in about 15 minutes. I don't want to pull you off guard. This, wow, this is a great topic. Tonight's show is called Flipping Temple Tables. We're looking at the energy that's happening in our streets. Power to the protesters, power to the protesters, power to the protesters. You were just talking about ancestral reverence. And one of the things that struck me, and I was talking to some of my friends about it the other day, is I said in ATRs and African traditional religions, there is an emphasis on ancestral recognition that's not necessarily as obvious in the Christian church. Now, if you watch a Catholic event, like when the Pope gets installed, they have a homily to the saints. They have a song to the ancestors. You know, the elevated ancestors.
Right,
you
right.
know, a homily, yeah, it's a song to the elevated ancestors. The other thing is, I'm seeing say the name, George Floyd, say her name, Breonna Taylor, say his name, Tamir Rice, say his name, Philando Castile. When they keep saying that name, from what I've learned from you, that's giving reverence to
it's
one of
giving
the
reverence.
ancestors.
It's giving empowerment.
It's giving empowerment.
That's right.
Let me step off because you taught me this. Oh man, go ahead.
Yeah, and you know, the thing is, and again, I can't be as proud I am of the youth, of what they're doing, and to actually have those individuals to talk to. A young brother, he's a godson of mine, hit me up whenever he say, "Baba, I'm on my way to Minnesota." He lives in Dallas, and I just say, "Be safe, brother." And I had him in prayer because it's important for us to understand that we have ancestors who are ready to do battle, and they've been waiting on us. An AME minister friend of mine, Reverend Anthony Jackson, has been the last 3 months. This brother cannot shake off dreams, epiphanies, deja vus. He's being visited by the likes of Bumpy Johnson, people such as Nat Turner, Mary Baker. He's being visited by these war type brothers and sisters who fought on our behalf. You understand? Now, why is this man not being possessed by Jesus? You understand what I'm saying? This man is being possessed by people who were known to be warrior-like spirits. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not here to say let's not call upon certain individuals who were prominent in our life. But we know that old uncle that went to jail. We know that old grandfather that fought back. In my own ancestry, one of my elders, one of my ancestors was castrated for being uppity. He was very well educated. So in our lineage, failure is not an option. So you're just not going to tell me anything and think I'm going to punk out and just, and I'm not going to question you if I feel like I have a question. But see, this is the best weapon in a warfare that you have. Is when someone tell you something you don't understand, say, I don't understand what you're saying. Or if someone tell you something, even if you don't know, say, look, brother, sister, I don't really know much about what you're talking about, but I'll take a look at it. Don't be so quick to agree to things. This is part of the consciousness that I'm talking about. This is part of what the Christ consciousness was about. If you look at the times and the stories around Yeshua or Jesus, that were things he questioned. Going back to your father and what he studied in theology school that they don't preach in church, this brother questioned a whole lot of things. So this is why you don't get all those books in the Bible, because this is where he was questioning things. And then you get like Apostle Paul said, "Oh yeah, be warned of spiritual wickedness and spiritual these people in high places. You know, you got to be mindful of the folks behind the curtain." And see, this is what I'm saying. This is what's important. And I didn't want to lose my thought, but African spirituality has always been about truth in regards to understanding who and what you are. If you come, and I'm not here to proselytize Ifa, but as a practitioner of Ifa, as a priest in Ifa, and we have several priests in our organization, they are all trained to understand the primary principle on a daily basis. What am I here for? What am I looking for? What is my craft? What is my role? And see, even at the end of the day, a priest is still a person. That doesn't mean their background gets erased because they become a priest. You don't become holier and holier than thou just because you become a priest. Mm-hmm. Or to be reverent is something you have to revere. You have to live it. So I tell them, don't just say that, you got to be that. Don't just say that, you got to do that. So when you start embracing African spirituality, and I also want to include other indigenous societies that have the same philosophy and ideology along with their cosmology. This is how they come into awareness of self, because they created altars. An altar represents the state of mind, like an altar state of mind. So there's no real quote unquote power in the altar, but the altar becomes a conduit, a vehicle, a vessel for you to get to the higher part of yourself, which is the God in you. Mm. So at that point, you lose the fear. And at that point, you begin to embrace the most important thing, and that is your divine spirit. And then you start to raise up and recognize the humanity not only in yourself, but your brothers and sisters. And now I'm also preaching this to white people. Since you don't seem to understand that we, quote unquote, are real human beings, that's only half. That's a portion of what we are. The majority of what we are is divine spirits. Now, when you out here performing and acting, in your behavior and your character and your attitude says anything but. But then you want to try to put me in a position through institutions to try to tell me I'm less thereof. Now, if I go out and about and live my life like that, shame on me. Mm-hmm. Because I have put you in a position of being responsible for my well-being. And there's nothing in your history that says you have my well-being as your best interest. Now that falls back on me, because now I may be hurt because somehow, even though you may have whipped me like a dog and you put me in a place like an animal, I'm supposed to respond a certain way. Now you no longer have ownership of the dog. You still want the dog to act a certain way. Well, the dog woke up and realized he can do things on his own. Now, I don't like to use analogies like that, but I actually use them for people to get a more simplistic understanding. But see, the thing of it is, this is what happened when someone's educate you, when some of these institutions are educating you away from your higher self. You have literally been educated away from your higher self. You don't even trust yourself anymore. You can't even feed yourself in a pandemic because the grocery store ain't open. You forgot how to hunt. You forgot how to fish. You forgot how to grow vegetables. But all of a sudden, Harris Teeter, Kroger, Randall's, and all these places are closed, and you think you're going to starve. You've lost your mind. And the birds are just eating. The ducks are eating. The squirrels are eating. And these are animals. And you say they ain't got no spirit. They ain't got no soul. But you've put your hands in the life of someone that you say holds the answer to your well-being. And now that this person is being revealed in a lot of their institutions, they've never had your best interest. You're like, oh my God. But some of us who have been down in the trenches say, seriously? This is the way it's been. So I don't want to harp on that part too long, but I want to say the importance of African spirituality, most importantly, is the awareness and knowledge of self. There's no African spiritual system that preaches salvation. There's only one religion that preaches salvation, and that's the one that brought you here on a boat. So you should think about that, that the whole aspect, you're born in sin. Sin is simply a definition of something born on the left side, meaning you're born unknowing. And you have to raise yourself up to a right perpendicular, as they teach you in the lodge, to become someone upright. So being in sin does not mean you're born wrong. You're born evil. You're born bad, and you got to be made whole. If that's the case, what the hell? What kind of joke is God playing?
Woo, woo, woo. Baba, we don't have too much time left. I'm going to let that question just marinate there for a second. I'm going to let it just sit there for a second. We had a couple of questions, I think literally 3 questions, that I want you to do rapid fire, which might be a little challenging.
Okay, I'll do my best. Make it short.
All right. So what about Seattle, where the Caucasians are holding a segment in the city hostage, including the police department? Now, that question doesn't give a lot of context, but just based upon what's there, what are your thoughts in 2 minutes or less?
I know of it. I have godchildren in Seattle. And my answer to that is the question, or more so the conversation I've had with a few of them. What are the people looking for? That's all I have.
Wow. Okay. Here's our second question. Baba Femi, if you come from a Christian background, would our ancestors be pleased with a transition to E5? Is that all ancestors choose us or certain is that all ancestors who choose us or certain ancestors? Those 2 questions combined. So she gets 2 for 1, Shakespeare's.
Okay. I don't believe all of our ancestors want us to practice Ifa. I do believe because ancestors have met up with their ancestors, and those ancestors met up with those ancestors. So at some point, the folks who practice African spirituality, I'm sure, have met with the people who practice Christianity. I don't think African spirituality has to be the way you need to go to elevate yourself. But I do know the theology that you've been following, most of you, because of this external growth, has not done you very well. Because most of you don't even know what you're here to do. So with that being said, Ifa is almost something that, not going to say almost. Ifa is something that you know is for you. It's a natural order. You don't do very well with religion. But I do believe that there are Christian brothers and sisters out there who are doing very well as far as raising up the vibration, raising up the energy. There are Christian brothers and sisters out there who are very well into a Christ consciousness, even if they don't use the term. Trust me.
Okay. And I guess our last question for tonight, in 2 minutes or less, what is that energy that's guiding our youth right now?
All ancestral, brother. It's all Egun. It's hard Egun. It's what you would call hard ancestors. Because, and let me say this for lack of a better way, because I have a short time. There are ancestors that we knew when they were here. They weren't the strongest of character. They weren't the most vocal of words. There were ancestors who never stood much for anything. They fell for a lot. And this is why it's important for us to understand this is our opportunity to seize the moment, to understand the choices, understanding our history, understanding those things that give us more weapons to fight with, to fight back with when you think that you're helpless. So for me, it's very important to understand that this energy that we're in is all ancestral. Man, this is all memory. This is DNA, spiritual, plantation running off. I'm gonna poison the master. I'm gonna kill this Negro over here who go and tell. This is the time. There's a lot of good people I know, man, that's angry, man. For celebrities to sit there and say they're angry, my thing is, I want to know what you plan on doing with your anger.
Brother, you said it was ancestral. Today is Father's Day in the Roman calendar year 2020. My father was from Phoenix City, Alabama. The last comment on here is a sister from Phoenix City, Alabama.
Wow. It's beautiful, man. Sister Sammy. So see, this is what I'm saying, man. This is for real. This is for real, man. If you listen to Dave Chappelle's 846, it's real. It's real. And they want to come in. They want us to come in. They want us to come in to them, and they want to come in to us. Because you've never been helpless. You've just been misinformed. I'm not going to tell you to put the Bible down. I'm going to tell you to pick it up and study it. Quit reading it and study it. When that brother or sister get to preaching on Sunday morning, I don't care how rude you are, how security may get you, raise your hand and say, can we have some questions? Can we come back on Tuesday? Can we come back on Wednesday? We need to talk about this. I don't want no more scriptures. I want some answers. I want some actions. Every church needs to have an ancestral altar. You're going here what Paul said, what Peter said, what Barnabas said, what John said. No, what did my grandmother, grandfather, great-great-grandfather say? Because I don't know these people. I don't know these Greeks and Romans. I don't know if they had my best interests at heart. Well, Baba, it's an African religion, but ain't no African names being referenced. Paul ain't African. I need his real African name. Give me the African name. Even if I know it personally, I need for you to give me what you say this is. An African story. I'm not coming back to church, Rev. I'm not giving you no more tithes until you give me some choices and the truth.
All right. Wow. That's why he's a friend of the show. Friends and family, Baba.
And happy Father's Day to all the brothers out there and to all the sisters who have beautiful husbands, beautiful brothers. Your biological fathers, your stepfathers have done good for you in life. Just take a moment out. If they are ancestors, tap the ground. You say, Moju Ba, I give thanks. Ibashe, I give praise to your walk, your journey. And I'm sure they left you at least one jewel to walk with. But brother, I feel you. This is real. Your podcast has been real. I'm going to actually be in your neck of the woods for 6 weeks. And we're going to practice some social distancing. So I think they want me to do a big lecture on the beach. I don't know. So we'll work it out.
Ashe, we'll definitely work that out. You've been enjoying the Fly Guy Show. Tonight's topic has been flipping temple tables. The ancestors are speaking. And we had a chance to spend some time with a friend of the show, a Baba of the show, Baba Femi. I tell you, this has been a great conversation, Baba. This has been a great conversation. And we thank you. So any last words? Talk about O.I.D.S.I before you get off.
O.I.D.S.I, you're more than welcome to visit the website, obafemi.org, OBAFEMI.org. O.I.D.S.I is an organization of brothers and sisters worldwide that have been they have went through the ceremonies of Tefa. They have went through the ceremonies of Tefa, Risha as well. They are works in progress. They are a process, and most importantly, they're doing their best not to judge the outcome and elevating themselves, working more closely with their ancestors. So many success stories. A lot of them will tell you how Ifa has saved their life. I take very, very little credit because I work with so many beautiful brothers and sisters in this organization that help put this thing together, work behind the scenes, travel with me across this planet, doing work for people in various corners of the world and throughout the Caribbean, South America. And O.I.D.S.I is an organization. It's an institute. We're not a church. We're not trying to. We're a spiritual organization, but we're not a church. We're not trying to recreate everything African because we are the Africans here in America, and our ancestors stand with us. The folks in
Wow.
Africa know very little of who and what we are and how we do what we do. So it's important for us to understand that the motherland has given birth to children in a different land, and it's time that we stand up and act like grown-ass children. Ashe.
Ashe. All right. I did say I was going to chat about reparations. I'm involved with the empowerment agenda. And in terms of reparations, what we're looking at is a debt. America owes a debt to a particular group.
Correct.
So, in this particular group for the United States of America are those who had ancestors who went through chattel slavery and then the Jim Crow era. So those are the ones that we're looking at. So we realize that there are some of us who had family immigrated here in the 80s and in the 70s, and some who started immigrating here in the 60s from Caribbean islands, from Africa, from the Latin islands. And so we all are one people here, but the reparations will go specifically to those who are descendants of those who were enslaved here in this America. And once we finish this one, then we're going to Dominican Republic and make sure they get reparations. We're going to Haiti, make sure they get their reparations. We're going to go around the world and push that. So, yeah, there's the movement is strong, and I'm glad you brought that up. It cannot repair everything, but America owes a debt. America owes a debt because they financially prevented people from receiving money for their labor. And then once the emancipation came, happy Juneteenth weekend, then they prevented, the American government allowed systemic things to be in place that prevented our ancestry from receiving the monies they should get from their work.
Correct.
Tulsa, Oklahoma was bombed.
Correct.
All the Black Wall Streets that were across our nation were systematically destroyed. And look, when what happened in Tulsa, the insurance companies refused to pay.
Right.
So not only did the government sanction the destruction like they did in Philadelphia, private industry withdrew. So those people who are descendants of those people are due financial restitution, the same way we gave our Native American family restitution. Our Native American family has received forms of restitution. So for Joe Biden to get on the stage and say, yeah, I'll consider restitution as long as Native Americans get it too. They already got it, Joe. You don't know what you're talking about. And then our Japanese brothers and sisters, for their 2 years, maybe 4 years in internment, they receive restitution. They receive reparations, right? And then our Jewish family, for something that happened and it wasn't even on American soil,
right?
They receive their forms of reparations. Now, here's the kicker. White slave owners here in the United States of America, in certain areas of America, receive reparations for each slave they owned after the emancipation.
That's true. Yeah.
So white people who own black people
were given reparations.
Receive restitution. Now our government is really slow in giving the descendants of those who went through chattel slavery in the Jim Crow era restitution. If you owe me $5, I don't care if it's going to take you 10 years. You got to give me my $5, or you got to give it to my children's children. This is what we're fighting for. So no, it's not going to repair everything that we can work on, but we are owed, and we got to fight for that.
I stand behind you 100%. My point is to stand behind you 101%. And that 1% is, it might be the biggest is we can at least acknowledge and pay homage and reverence to the people who actually did that work. And I think, and again, I always like the people to understand, I speak frankly when it comes to certain things about the church, because I think it is simultaneously, it has the ears of most black folks every Sunday morning. Simultaneously, a lot of damage is going to the ears and the minds of black people. And we always preaching prosperity and God wants you to be rich. And here you are, you got a check waiting for you that still, it may even be signed, but you can't get it.
It's crazy.
And the thing is that I believe, it's just me, I believe when we pay homage to those individuals who actually did the 9 to 5 or from sunrise to sunset, when we can acknowledge them, I don't think no way in hell they can stop us from getting what is owed to us.
All right. Well, I think that we're on the precipice. It's going to happen maybe within the next 20 years. Who knows? I know that the ancestors are speaking. The tables are flipping. The tables are flipping. The tables are flipping. So you've been checking out the Fly Guy Show with Baba Femi, and we're going to have you back soon because I know you didn't finish. I know you didn't finish.
Well, you know,
and I'm about to get a lot of hate emails.
Well, you know,
you interrupted him too much.
Yeah, E5 is a very broad thing. It's a wisdom of nature. E5 is something that we had in West Africa throughout the whole coastline, from Angola all the way up to Guinea. I mean, it's who and what we were before the colonists came. Again, I'm not saying it's the answer, but I know it's a answer. I do know our ancestors are the answer. So if you want to, it's whatever your system is, you want to do it with sincerity and the knowledge of it, the wisdom of it. Because that's what E5 is, the wisdom of nature. It's the natural order of things and how things are supposed to flow. Your natural divine being, understanding why you're here and having the same opportunities to fulfill your journey as anything or anyone else that has been given to you. And that's what's most important about E5. That's what we're trying to teach here at O.I.D.S.I. And most importantly, helping people to learn to get out of their own way.
Get out your own way. I say. All right. So with that, I just want to say, everybody, keep coming back. We have other shows. Check out our YouTube channel, which is Our Black Improvement. You can find this episode and other episodes. I really think that the episode that you did, Baba, on Will Jesus Fix It is a prelude to this one. So if you enjoyed this one, go back and check out Will Jesus Fix It featuring Baba Femi. That part. Ashe.
Ashe.